Hi, I'm Andrew Spieler,
And I'm Mary Hope Rennie.
and you're watching or listening to Behind the Sign, real stories from real estate. Welcome back to part 2 of Helpful Questions. So we covered quite a bit of ground in part 1, right? So part 1, we talked about kind of the common misconceptions that people have when they're getting into
Real
the
estate,
industry,
yeah.
right? We talked a little bit about the importance of choosing the right brokerage,
Yeah.
right? And what that looks like. And we touched a little bit on commission splits, right? And different structures and how every brokerage operates a little differently. So what we're going to follow up with is going to be more of the challenges that agents face once they've stepped through the threshold, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you've picked your brokerage, you passed the test, now you're coming in, and this is where the tidal wave hits you
Yeah.
of the work, right?
Before we jump into that, because I feel like
Yeah.
getting into this, it's overwhelming. And we're trying to break it down a little bit. But also in getting in the nitty-gritties, you can say, oh my gosh, is this worth this? And we're going to talk about even the pitfalls and all of that. But before that, I also want to remind everybody that this all this stuff we're talking about, all this nitty-gritty allows you the opportunity to build a huge business.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of remind ourselves of that. And we kind of wanted to go back to the basics of it. But the reason we're doing all this is because you're starting your own business.
Well, to relate it to a visual metaphor,
Yeah.
right? When you're building a house, probably the most unpleasant part is digging the hole in the ground,
Right.
setting up everything you
Right.
need for the basement,
Right.
filling it with concrete, right?
Yeah.
It's heavy, it's dirty, it's time intensive,
Yes.
it's laborious, but it's the first part of the process, right?
And also, I think what happens is, I think as a culture, even, we want immediate results.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of why we're breaking this down, this misconception that you walk in the door and you make a lot of money. I think that's what we talked about that last week as well. And yes, it's not an immediate result. Yet, what you're building right now as a new agent, or what you could build if you do it the right way, can be something that you never imagined. I mean, when I started, I shared it that I wanted to do a few deals a year. That would have changed. That in and of itself was a big deal. And I've built a business where I can step out of it. My husband was able to leave his job. We're able to support the family through this. We bought investment properties. It changed the whole trajectory of our life because of it. It didn't look like that at the beginning. And I think that's what we're trying to bring it back down to, like, okay, what is it really?
Yeah.
Yet, the reason we so badly want people to do the hard work at the beginning is what we know is possible for anyone and everyone willing to do the work.
Mhm.
No matter your personality, as we've said, these agents are from such different walks of life that we've interviewed. Very outgoing people to very shy people to reserved to um, just a lot of different personalities.
Part-time.
Part-time going into full-time, everything. What the core thing that any successful agent has to do is do the hard work now at the beginning when they're doing it. It's not going to come to them. And I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't fall into your place. You don't sign a contract and you get a job and you're making 100 grand a year salary.
Right.
Like, that's just not going to happen. Yet with that, you're able to have as much flexibility to make as much as you want, depending on how much you work.
Mhm.
That you're not stuck at 100,000 for the rest of your life.
Right.
Most new agents said, if I could just sign away and make 100,000, that would be amazing. And yet there's so much potential for way more and building your own business. So I just, when I was thinking back at the last one, I was like, I don't want to discourage people.
Sure. Yep.
And I think we're very blunt and honest here, but it's because my desire is to see people go way beyond what they ever imagined.
Mhm.
It changed my life. It's changed your life. There's so many opportunities in it, yet so many people don't push over that hump of doing the hard work at the beginning. And we're going to talk about burnout and not seeing the, results right away. A lot of people quit. And I just want to let people know there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that was just something I've been thinking about.
Well, and I know we've talked about it maybe once or twice too, but it's Alan or Bill, when they do their sort of business, workshops, talking about the fact that a lot of businesses, not just real estate, right, are this hockey stick profile,
Yeah.
right, where it's sort of flat, 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 and then a curve, and then all of a sudden, boom, right,
Right.
up the. And I think that that's true of any business that you put that time and energy into up front, right? You can put in time, energy, or money into something to have it grow and blossom, or be invested in something you're going to see a return on. And I think when you're a new agent, it's hard to know if the juice is worth the squeeze because you can't really see it, right? There's nothing
Right.
tangible there.
Right.
Um, but I do think that if you're committed to it and you can realize what the actual process of the job is, which is what we were talking about, and if you feel like it's a good fit for you, then you will be successful,
Right.
you know?
And you're willing to do the work and have mentors,
Mhm.
people to tell you what those steps for success are.
Right. Yep.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Great.
So, anyway, I just
Yep.
wanted to give that at the
Yes.
beginning.
Yeah. We're not saying it's impossible. We're just saying you got to roll up your sleeves, you roll up your sleeves
Yeah.
and do the work.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Now, when it comes to doing the work,
Okay.
so our question here is, what are some of the biggest challenges new agents face when it comes to generating leads, right? When you're just getting going.
Right. I would say not having a big enough sphere, meaning you don't know enough people.
Hmm.
This is a people business,
Yep.
and or not thinking you know enough people,
Ah, yeah, that's probably.
or there's not enough people you're willing to reach out to.
Yep.
It's a numbers game. Of course, it's a personal business that you want to make connections, but it's a numbers game. If you contact us enough of people, if you have enough leads, you're going to, unless you don't have the skill set, but that's assumed that you at least know how to talk to people.
Hmm.
But if you have the leads, there are numbers that work. You're talking about the business planning clinic. There's literally numbers we've researched of if you contact this many people, if you contact 10 warm leads, one of them is going to have an appointment with you.
Right.
From that appointment, half of them will sign a contract with you. All
Yeah.
of those things. So it's the amount and not knowing where to find those. And
Well,
it's
I
just,
feel like that's something I remember Tyler when he was talking about it,
mm,
like for him having an engineering background, he was talking about like, okay, yeah, if I make 100 phone calls, out of 100, one or two are going to raise their hand, right? But I have
right,
to make the 100 calls in
right,
order to get the 10% margin. Another thing I hear a lot of agents say too is when they're getting in, they go, well, especially if they're younger, right? Maybe they're just out of college or whatever. And they go, well, I don't really know a lot of people who are in the market to buy or sell because all I know are my friends who are my age. And right now they're not looking to buy or sell. And then that's when you got to hit them with, right? But your friends have parents, your
absolutely.
friends have brothers, cousins,
Well,
right?
and I think so. That's still sphere, and I think if you can build your business on a sphere, that's usually the best and
Mhm.
simplest. So that's the first thing, the sphere. However, there are cold leads. And when we say cold leads, it's people you don't know personally that you can text and say, "Hey, how are you doing?
Mhm.
How's it going?" and have a two-way conversation.
Yeah.
There are so many ways. Now there are paid leads, and people do that and they've had success.
Yep.
They have referral systems. I know Stephanie Shively uses a veterans program that they give her leads and they take a percentage. So there are options out there for many things. Um, and there are a lot of options right inside of the real estate world. Open houses. You can door knock. It's
Hmm.
not my jam,
Right.
but it's a lot of people's jam, and they do way better, and they would rather do that than talk to their sphere.
Yeah.
We've heard that with
Yeah.
agents. There are, sending out mailers and cards. You just need to know on cold leads. You're just going to have to do 10 times. I believe that's the number. And Alan or Bill are going to correct me on that. I believe it's 10 times the amount of contacts
Hmm.
to get one warm lead to get to an appointment.
Right.
So that's why I say go with your sphere because it's a lot less work or build your sphere. So if you don't have a big enough sphere, well, find those people.
Hmm. Yeah.
Go be a part of communities
Plug
or
yourself in.
groups. Plug yourself in. Put yourself out there. You cannot do this business if people don't know you're in real estate.
Yep.
I mean, we joke about it and being a hidden agent. People will not hire you if they don't know you're an agent. So it's one of those things. And people won't hire you if they don't trust you.
Mm-hmm.
That's why if it's somebody that already trusts you and knows you, once they know you know the business, they'll hire you way easier
Yeah.
than a cold lead.
Yeah.
A
And
cold
just
lead,
to make that
yeah,
distinction, right? A warm lead is somebody that you have some connected tissue to,
yes,
right?
yep,
Either through a friend, or a direct, person versus cold lip, which is they've never met you, right?
yep.
There's
You're
nothing there
meeting them for the
set up.
first time. You hand them a business card or um, for sale by owners, people that don't know you personally.
Mm-hmm.
Warm leads could be people you've sold homes for in the past.
Yeah.
That's probably the hardest part about new agents. They don't have that history.
Yeah.
That they don't have the history of the business.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it also is they don't believe they have enough experience themselves.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, so there's the difference of where you can find leads, and you're also figuring out. Like I said, this is why you have to have patience. Figuring out who your people are. Again, another thing we've talked about so much with such great examples. Um, Once you find the people that you work with most closely and do a good job, of course you can take care of anybody. But if you find your people and then you target that and focus on that, down the road, that is going to be the basis of your business. But at the beginning, you don't have that. You don't know that. So you're going to take everything and anything. You're going to take every lead, which will mean that you're going to have a lot that you're going to be, they're kicking tire. What is it?
Right.
The word? Is it kicking tires?
Yeah, I
No,
don't know. Kissing a lot of frogs.
there you go.
Kissing a lot of toads, whatever.
It's so bad at
Right.
those kind of things.
Well, but it's true, right? And I mean, I remember, I think my first two leads, potential clients, were totally cold. And they were cold just because I'd met them at an open house I was covering for another agent,
Okay.
right? So they walked in the door, they had a conversation with me. And when you're in person,
Yeah.
there is no phone, there is no like ability to look up and be like, oh, well, how experienced is this person, right? You're just seeing if you connect.
Correct.
So if somebody walks in the door and you have a connection with someone, I think most people are willing to sort of negate, data and historical record if they feel like they can trust you and they get along with you and
Yes.
that you have some sort of, common bond, really,
Right. Well, and actually, what we have seen with a lot of people, especially younger agents, I would say, because they don't have as much work experience and things like that. Cold leads are sometimes the best leads in the new age, as a newer agent. That sounds strange, but
No, I get it.
like you said, and that's what triggered that is that when they're coming into open house, they don't know. As long as you're presenting yourself well, you have knowledge.
Impression.
It's first impression. And I remember, and maybe even Bill said this on this. His first year, he still has the track of who used, and I think he only had one person he knew, and the rest were cold leads. They came from people calling in the office,
Mhm.
door knocking, open houses. I can't remember. I probably totally botched it.
Yeah.
But his whole first year, because he started when he was 21.
Hmm.
So his people weren't willing to give him their commission yet because they didn't know if he
Right.
was good at it.
Yeah.
People who you don't know that.
Right.
And so as long as you have enough resources on hand, you have confidence, you build up that knowledge and know it,
Hmm.
then it's all about the relationship.
Yep.
And so those are, I think that's the hard part in the first year of figuring out that combination. Once you do a good job in real estate, your people, your sphere are going to come to you because they trust you already. But when you've been doing this business and you come to this, they don't know if you're good or not. So they're afraid to give your name out to people
Yeah,
and
they know
things
you
like
too well
right.
to a
So
degree.
that in and of itself, it's going to be for almost every person. You're going to struggle with the leads at the beginning because you don't have the track history yet.
Yeah.
Yet you're building up and you're having to work a lot harder at the beginning. And that's just the business.
Yeah, but that's also any industry, right? Any industry you get
industry.
into in the beginning, even I wish I could remember exactly what company it is, but I think it's one of these high fashion companies, either Gucci or somebody. They have a rule where like they bring in somebody who's on like a CEO level or
Yep.
a high level. They have to attend all the meetings, but they're not allowed to speak for the first 3 months.
Wow.
Once they're hired, they have to just sit there and listen.
Yep.
Right. And somebody questioned them about this, well, I have an idea. Why can't I submit it? They go, we already hired you because we know you're smart. We don't we don't need to hear that you're smart. We want you to listen to how the system works, right,
Yep.
for a period of time, and then you can contribute, right? Then we'll take your
Agreed.
ideas. And so it just goes to show any industry you step into as a first time. I mean, when I got in the film
Absolutely.
industry, the first job I had was grunt work. It was brutal.
Absolutely.
I mean, brutal,
Absolutely.
right? But you quickly learn trial by fire.
Yeah.
And while painful, those experiences also build up. And it's funny because Bonnie Gavin in our office here has another podcast called Gritology, where she talks about this, right? Where grit is formed through trials and tribulations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Failing and
Mm-hmm.
attempting again.
Right.
And it's the same thing here. You have to sort of build up a bit of an identity and a bit of a thick skin to know that you're
Right.
going to be interfacing with a whole lot of people who are either not going to answer the door if you're cold knocking,
Yeah.
or who are going to call you something not nice on the
Yeah.
phone, right?
Or
And,
just knows. Just
or just
knows.
knows, or just not interested, right?
Well, and I think as people, we don't like no's.
Of course.
So this business makes you uncomfortable, especially if you've never run your own business and haven't started from scratch. And yet, those who can stick it out for those first 2 years,
Mhm.
even without tons of success, really usually can stick it out long term.
Yeah.
And our goal is to at least get them producing so they can stay in the business. But
Mhm.
it's not going to, of course, there are people that out of the gate kill it, but most don't.
Mhm.
I It took me years to build mine up.
Mhm.
That's just the reality of this business. And so yeah, I would say that beginning, it is hard, and your main job is to find leads. End of story.
Yeah.
Don't worry about anything else in the business until you find leads. If you don't have leads, you can't have appointments. If you don't have appointments, you can't have closings.
Mhm.
That's our one job. I was just talking to our office about that lead generation is your one job. And if you're not doing that, you can't complain about not making money.
Mhm.
That is our business, is lead generation. And if you're not willing to, that's why people leave. They realize they don't want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, so kind of a follow-up question to that,
Yeah.
right? Is how what are effective strategies to sort of build up your client base, right? When you're getting going. And I know that, like, thinking back to when I was coming in, it was a lot of like, we'll go through every number you have in your phone, right? Every contact you have in your Facebook page, and first let them all know this is what you're doing,
Make sure they know you're a
right?
realtor.
Make sure, so there's like step one.
Yeah.
But beyond that, we're talking about going and plugging yourself into a community and going somewhere where you're going to be found and make connections. What are some other good, very sort of site specific steps and strategies to make
Mm,
during that sort of initial client roster
right.
buildup?
I think, and I brought this up, I think, last time in my mentorship with Darlene. First was the database, which I didn't want to do,
Right.
which you should do. So that's in and of itself having a system.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't have to be a pretty one. It literally could be a Rolodex. I don't think most people know what a Rolodex is.
Sure.
It could be a notebook, but we have a system. Like, we have a CRM, the client CRM. What is the
Client
man?
relationship manager.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Mm.
Wow. Um,
Or relations manager.
yeah, something like that. But that's how much I take it serious. No, just kidding. But I use it. If you don't have a place to track it, how do you know if you're lead generating?
Right.
Right? I was just talking to an agent and I said, "Did you plug them into our pipeline? We have a system that tracks where you're at with each client." I said, "Well, how do you you can feel busy. You
Mm.
can feel you have a lot of possibilities, but if you can't see, like, you need reality." So, I think putting systems in place right away for your database,
Mm-hmm.
um and that might be why it took me a little longer because I didn't do that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, be of service to people.
Mm.
I say that because this business is helping others.
Yeah.
And if you can't help, and if you're not willing to help people for no pay, they're not going to trust you. Meaning, you need to provide them with something so they can see how you work and provide them service and know that it's not all about the money.
Right.
Those who are all about the money, you can smell that from as far away as possible. So when you're desperate and you're feeling like you need things, people can smell that.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get leads that way? Yes. And that's not a way to build a business.
Right.
The way you should build a business and the way to set yourself up for a long-term business is being a person to be that person that people come to when they need something. And that's not just real estate.
Mm-hmm.
That's I think we talked about that. Our partners, right? If I need a plumber, if I need a landscape company, being that person that can get that information and serve people
Mm-hmm.
and provide service to people. That's how I feel like
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to come to you if they don't know what you're willing to do and what you can do.
Yep.
And so many people start saying, "Hey, I'm a realtor," and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we'll even to further emphasize the point, you go and sell a house, right? And the next person you have a potential listing appointment with, they had no knowledge of how that listing went.
Correct.
They don't know any details. There's nothing there for them to gauge off of your ability, really, beyond maybe looking at the marketing material that went out
Right.
on the listing, right?
That they all look the same.
Right, exactly. So
Just solo.
so there's not a whole lot for anybody to go off of other than how you present in a room with that person,
Right.
right? So whether you're meeting people at an open house, at a sit-down listing appointment, at a coffee meeting,
Yeah.
right? At a birthday party, right? It happens anywhere.
Anywhere.
And if you say that, like I know people who I was just at an event a couple weeks ago, and they were like, they know that I'm in the real estate sphere, and they were like, well, we're thinking about selling, maybe the next couple of years, but do you think it's good to sort of upgrade, some of our systems? And I was like, well, yeah, if they're past a certain period of time, it would probably behoove you to
Right.
do an inspection, and if you need somebody, I can get that for you,
Yeah.
right? And that's just me. Who knows if they were going to list? Who knows if they were going to go with it,
Well,
right?
and I had that experience with a previous client just this weekend,
Mhm.
reached out to me and said, "Hey, I need your opinion." And they were just thinking about doing something. They're not planning on moving for 8 years.
Yeah.
But they're talking about, is this worth it? Is this worth it? And I was on vacation and I was like, of course I can respond to that. That stuff is in my blood. But they knew I was there to help them out,
Right.
even if there was no return back.
Mhm.
And that's where giving of yourself, even when there's not a guaranteed back, if you are only giving when you're going to get something back, first of all, that's just not a good human trait.
Right. Yeah. It's just a
We're
bad
not.
mindset.
We talked about that, being a good human person,
Yeah. Mhm.
being 100% there for people when you're hearing them and talking to them. Um,
Which
lis-
is ironic because I do think that, I've heard stories where people take 4 listing appointments, right? And at the end of the day, 3 of them come in and they do a lot of volume and they're very well known and their faces everywhere, but they went with the person in the room who has kids the same age as they do, right? And they connected on that just personal understanding of what each other is going through. And like, that's all that mattered to them, was
Yeah.
that they wanted to work with somebody who understood their situation.
yeah.
Right. And like that, I just think wins,
So being authentic,
time.
I think that's the other element of it. Giving of yourself and being authentic and not being fake and kind of just putting on an air of
Agent face.
Yeah.
Mhm.
People smell that from far away. Do you have to fake it until you make it? Absolutely.
But you don't have to fake being a good person unless you're not a good person. Then you're trying to
Well,
figure
then
out.
there's
Right, that's a different, yeah.
But no, faking on you, your first appointment is always going to be your first appointment,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
You have to fake a little because you don't know what to expect.
Right.
But also just being authentic and honest and being there to serve them. If
Mhm.
you're there to get a contract signed, a lot of times you won't get that.
Mhm.
If you're going there to help them out, so many times when I've met with people, I've had to tell them, this is not a good time for you to buy or sell. I started in '09. Remember that. Not most, a lot of people were underwater on their homes.
Right.
So they would have had to come to the table with money.
Hmm.
I had to do a lot more listing appointments. And I had to advise some people not to list right now because they could not afford it.
Yep.
And I had to be honest with them. It's not helpful to say, the listing price they want.
Of
If
course.
that's not going to be the listing price,
Yes.
right? We're seeing things sitting on the market longer.
Mhm.
We need to be honest and authentic in how people we would want to be treated
Mhm.
in our largest investment of our life,
Yep.
right? How would you want to be treated? Treat people that way. You're gonna do just fine.
Mhm. Right.
And it's when we overthink it and we're selfish and all we're thinking of is dollar signs. That's gonna usually get the biggest and not doing the work and waiting for it to come to me.
Right. Yep. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So let me jump to this is going to be our last one here.
Okay.
Um, and it's kind of a multifaceted one, right? One is, and this is kind of a quicker answer. Is there a particular time of year or market condition that makes it easier or harder to start a real estate career? And I would say no, right? Because
No.
the market ebbs and flows. It rises like the tide. And it's just like,
And I would say, remember I told you I started in '09.
mhm,
This time right now is probably the best time
right.
because we are seeing a market shift.
Hmm.
Things are not flying off the market. So you're going to be able to build a skill set. First of all, you're going to be able to have opportunities to learn how to negotiate, learn how to deal with inspections, learn how to deal with things falling through.
Yeah.
That probably the last 3 to 4 years, newer agents didn't even have those options
Hmm.
because it never even came up.
Right.
Appraisal issues.
Hmm.
My first listing, it we listed it for 215 or we got it under contract for 215. It appraised for 205.
Hmm.
That was fun.
Yeah. Hmm.
And that incident, like it was 225, we sold it for 215. That's a different market.
Right.
And 205. And this was a large, beautiful home for 205. And it didn't appraise. Um, I had to learn that right at the beginning
Hmm.
and having those conversations with one of my best friends to help tell them to keep this deal together. We're gonna have to sell the home for lower than we even thought or negotiated and things like that. So in that way, not that there's a good or bad time to get into real estate because everybody is wanting to buy or sell.
Right.
A lot of people think this is a bad time because so many people are leaving the industry. Not
Hmm.
so many. A lot of people are because things are just not falling into place.
Hmm.
But if you can learn how to do the hard work now, which you have to do anyhow when you're a new agent,
Right.
if you can do that systematically and learn it really well, then when things start coming back a little bit and shifting a little more, you're going to be in the driver's seat
You're gonna be
and
prime.
you're going to be a top agent.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's so that is a little different. I don't think there's a better season,
Yeah. I don't. I
especially now that the
I-
classes are all virtual. You can do it in any weather. You don't have to
yeah.
go outside.
And I don't think anybody looking at it's going to be like, I'll be an agent in 2 years from now when the market sort of, comes back. It's just
Well,
like,
but people
well,
hesitate to do it because they're worried. They see so many agents in the industry or,
sure.
is it hard? Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
And it always has been.
Yeah.
It's just hard in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. And so the second half of that is, would you say there's been any big changes over the years for new agents and different from, I don't know, say 10, 15 years ago
Yeah.
versus now? And I think the answer to that is also kind of not really,
Not really.
right? I mean, I think the means in which we communicate and we market properties has changed,
Yeah.
right? We have cool tools like Showing Time and stuff
Yeah.
where we can book appointments and, have things kind of be automated.
The MLS is online.
The MLS, right. The MLS is online.
I mean,
It's
we're
not printed
talking.
in, but right, but beyond that,
Yeah.
again, the transactional process of everything we've been talking about, right? The relationships between you and the client, expectations of the client, and just providing a good service. Uh,
Yeah, I don't think so, except that I think because we're habituated to the digital world, it's hard for us to do the grind of calling people.
mhm.
And we're kind of wanting to push buttons to make things happen.
Yeah.
It's the same business. It's a people business. It's a lead generating business. It's a relational one. And we've talked about this even. Social media is wonderful, yet it does separate us.
Yeah.
It's supposed to bring us together. However, especially the next generation has a hard time having those conversations face to face because they haven't needed to. It's all text
Right.
or not even text anymore. It's photos or
Hmm.
whatever. So I do feel that there is something that now that we have so much digital
Mhm.
things at our fingertips, it gets even more convoluted and we're not sure what to
Yeah.
focus on. You know, everybody wants a website, a sign, business cards, which just so you know, you don't need business cards in this
Right.
business.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually was asked for one the other day and I'm like, oh, I really should have one. I do have business cards, but that's not going to make or break your business. And I think we get so distracted in so many shiny objects.
Yeah.
Um, you know, when there wasn't anything and you literally were sitting in the office waiting for next week's list of homes to come into the book, the
Mhm.
MLS book,
Yeah.
you couldn't sit around pretending to be busy.
Right. Right.
You actually had to talk to people. So
Mhm.
I do feel that um, we just have to be careful. And all these tools are at our fingertips, and we have even more tools than ever, just even in our world,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
We're able to leverage so much
Mhm.
that
But
it's
knowing
hard for.
which tool is actually the
Right.
right tool for the job.
And that's where a lot of people say, do you give us leads?
Right.
And there are companies who do.
Mhm.
And I would say you're going to make more money generating your own leads because that's your business. And
Right.
any leads that people give you, that's not going to build you a business. So the business is still the same. I think new agents are expecting a little more of a push the button and make it happen
Mhm.
than in years past. So that would be maybe the shift of the industry that
And that's
yeah.
a larger cultural discussion.
Well, that's what I mean. I
About
think it's more of a cultural thing of just the technology around us.
Yeah.
We're not having to think as much.
Right.
We have ChatGPT.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
I mean
it's
really,
the impact of instant communication,
and the
instant
speed
gratification.
and the speed. So our clients expect more.
Yeah.
They expect faster responses. They expect so it changes, yet having this as a people business, generating leads, no, it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to do that, again, the numbers haven't changed. You know, 80% leave the business in 2 years. That I don't think that has changed much.
Yeah.
You know, that those numbers stay the same because 80% of people aren't willing to do the hard work of the 20%.
Yep. It's true.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Wow.
think that that it's interesting that all of these things the answer comes down to the same thing. It just might be a different perspective or how we do it. We might educate in a different way because we have the means, right? Like even
Mhm.
we have access to so much, and that also is our problem. I tell that to people when they come.
Overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. I tell the agents the best thing about our brokerage is that we have so much education. The worst thing about our brokerage is we have so much education
Mhm.
because then you don't focus on what's important.
Right.
And so you need to listen to the people that are going to guide you through it, and they will help you because there's so much noise
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah. It's true.
So
All right. Well, pretty in depth. And again, a reminder. I mean, I know we asked this last time, but other questions, specifics that you want to call out to us that we can answer on the show or bring somebody on to talk about, we'd love to do that. So please make sure that if you are watching us on YouTube, you are like, sharing, subscribing. Makes a big difference for us. So if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. And we will see you next week.
we will see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Behind the Sign, Real Stories from Real Estate.
We hope you enjoyed today's conversation and gained a little insight into the world behind those for sale signs.
Today's episode was brought to you by Keller Williams Realty Metropolitan, proudly serving New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, and Massachusetts. A special thank you to our agents, leadership, and partners at KW Metro for their continued support.
And thanks to you, our amazing listeners and viewers. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Leave us a review or comment. We love hearing your feedback, and it helps more people discover the show.
And if you have a real estate story you'd like to share or a question you want answered on a future episode, reach out to us at metro.kw.com or find us on Instagram, handle at KWMetroNH.
Until next time, we'll see you
Behind the Sign.